Hey, everybody, this is Eric. It's another great day of recovery, one day at a time. I am going to be talking about resentments and how to deal with them in the context of family. This was brought to my attention by a person who is seeking help, and it's like, it's much more difficult to work this program with family members um, than just about anybody else. And I heard someone share, and this made a lot of sense, that recovery, my disease state of being an addict affects myself first, then it affects those closest to me. And that's why they feel probably crazy and codependent being in a relationship with an addict. By the way, I'm in recovery by God's grace. But then friends are probably secondarily affected, and then farther out or work and farther out. Recovery, strangely enough, it seems that it's easier to recover from the people on the outside first. That I can treat people with respect, salespeople, and just back that. And then the last people on the list seems to be my family, and it should be the other way around. But we'll look at this. The same simplicity of the 12-step program works for family members. It does. It's actually vital. And so let's go to the AA Big Book. Later, I'll be doing another live stream, real actually soon. In fact, right after this on family systems. So I'm doing two today. So enjoy. Hopefully, this will be helpful. Um, so let's look at things here. It says that this is page 64, which is step 4. And it says resentment is the number one offender. It destroys more alcoholics, and I'm going to add some words, or families than anything else. From it stem all forms of spiritual disease, for we have not only been mentally or physically ill, we have been spiritually sick. When the spiritual malady is overcome, we straighten out mentally and physically. In dealing with resentments, we set them on paper. So I'm going to revamp this a little bit. We listed family members with whom we were angry. We asked ourselves why we were angry. Okay. And I guess our self esteem, our pocketbooks, finances, ambitions, or personal relations were hurt or threatened. And we know that they didn't really spend a lot of time there. It says, we were sore, we were burned up. So we went back through our lives. Nothing counted but thoroughness and honesty. When we were finished, we considered it carefully. The first thing apparent that our family members were often quite wrong. To conclude that others in our family were wrong was as far as most of us ever got. The usual outcome was that our family members continued to wrong us and we stayed sore. Sometimes it was remorse and we were sore ourselves. So in interacting with family members, we're just still so mad at ourselves. Why don't I stand up and defend myself? It says, but the more we fought and tried to have our own way, the worse matters got. As in war, the victor only seemed to win. Our moments of triumph were short lived. Isn't that the truth? We could have a fight as a kid, siblings. I mean, did we ever really win? Parents fighting back and forth. Does anybody ever really win? In custody battles, fighting over children, does anybody really ever win? Yeah, triumphs are short lived. It is plain that a life which includes deep resentment leads only to futility and unhappiness. To the precise extent that we permit these, do we squander the hours that might have been worthwhile? I'm going to add, squander the years or the time in our life with family members that could have been worthwhile. But with the alcoholic whose hope is the maintenance and growth of a spiritual experience, this business of resentment is infinitely grave. We found that it is fatal, for when harboring such feelings, we shut ourselves off from the sunlight of the Spirit, or we say God. The insanity of alcohol or any addiction returns and we drink again. And with us, to drink is to die. If we were to live and happily, we had to be free of anger. The grouch and the brainstorm were not for us. They may be the dubious luxury of normal men and women, but for alcoholics, these things are poison. Okay, with me so far? Let's look at this. We're going to talk about this here. So, how many of us have been stuck in family relationships for years? We just can't change the dynamics. It's a powerful system. The way systems work is that a watch has many parts, and those parts all put together become something greater than just the sum of its parts. Okay, so a car, you put those parts together in such a way it becomes something miraculous, something way different. So you put family members together, it's not just like five individuals, something else develops. Okay, so if I'm, say, like over functioning and have to be the good one and perfect, and I don't even think this consciously, but I just feel this, how am I affecting other members by that role I play? Oh, hi, John. It's good to see you. Oh, you may appreciate this. We're talking about family members tonight. Well, we're all in a family. Um, yeah, if I'm the good one, then it presupposes someone on this teeter-totter is going to be the bad one. And no matter how hard they try, they just can't get better. And this would be the family scapegoat role. If you have parents that have addiction issues, those kids are going to be affected. And I hear it all the time. Well, they're not drinking in front of the kids or doing sex addiction in front of the kids, thankfully, or smoking marijuana in front of the kids, or maybe they are. But no, their minds and hearts are being affected, which then those kids can grow up in different ways. They may overcompensate, sensing the family shame by being compulsively good, or they are scapegoated to the mom and dad can't really deal with their own feelings, so they project it onto family members. So it becomes not a fun place to be. Um, the whole idea of family intervention is a very interesting idea. I think originally it was kind of what they would call a surprise party to kind of gang up on the person who's the alcoholic or addict and try to rope, hog tie them into recovery. I think then they learned that that doesn't work because there was a back door in the treatment center and the person would just go flying out of it as fast as they could. Or after, oh, hi, Stephen. Nice to see you there. That you hog tie these people, shove them into treatment, and then they just come out and they're not sober any later after a lot of money. So you really can't make other people do things that, and that's part of a system. And people in recovery from codependency could ask, what is my motive here? Is my motive to try to fix someone, to try to, I know better, and to try to get them to do what I want and then everything will be right? Or am I just trying to be useful or helpful or follow God in this process? So Resentment is re-feeling things over and over and over and over again. And in and of itself, it is addictive. I do believe it's kind of, I'm working on a video slowly but surely on, it's going to be, I'm sorry, I'm wrestling with the chair here. It's going to be called Resentahol. I'm going to have an old time bottle. And if your life is boring, and if your muscles are flabby, and if you're getting really good sleep, you might try Resentahol. Resentahol will help that muscle tone because you'll have chronic tension 24 hours a day. And when you think you're seeing clearly, Resentahol gives you such a better perspective because it helps you see things the way things really are, that I really know better than you do, and that you deserve to be punished or at least controlled or advice given to you to try to fix you, you know. Um, yeah, no, because resentment is a very um, dangerous thing because it really blocks us from God at so many levels. It's a soul sickness. It's addictive. It's like it's never going to be enough. If you notice that in the world, no one ever says, "Wow, I have held a resentment towards someone, and now I feel satisfied." I've been there. I held resentments towards my parents, towards people for years. It does not work. Does not work, and it's inebriating in that it just makes you feel momentarily right, and you've been wronged. It's kind of like a card that you play in this game, card game of life, where I can, it's like a wild card. Like, I'll play this, say, well, you wronged me in the past, and therefore I deserve some kind of extra attention or love or special treatment. That's why I drink, that's why I do all these things, etc. And you probably have heard this, but it says resentment is a poison I drink in hopes that you will get sick and die. Thankfully, this is just water. Um, but it harms us. And there's studies, I'm sure, that show it's not good for our nervous systems. And let's get back to the family, but I'm going kind of outward. But, things start off as just a little rub the wrong way. And then it grows and grows and grows and grows, and it becomes a conflict. And if the conflict can't really get resolved in a peaceful way, it starts to get buried, and we start to go to sleep on our anger. And then we start to hold a grudge, and it's there. And it's so insidious, it's so subtle. But the traits are, I'm a little bit better than you, that I've somehow got a better perspective. Resentment is similar to any addiction. And let's talk sex addiction for a minute because it's very interesting. But resentment fits any addiction. In both cases, and addicts can treat people as objects. But if I have a resentment towards someone, I start to see them as just as an object. I start to forget that they're people with feelings, that they have their own story, their own childhood, their own struggles, and that I really can't even begin to read their mind. I can't even begin to understand what their world is like. But no, I treat them as an object. What they also have in common is it's fantasy. It's something made up in my head. It started off as maybe something based in reality, but then pretty soon a person gets inebriated in it. In both cases, with resentment and lust, there's this sense that I'm in the driver's seat and I'm controlling this imaginary reality, replaying it over and over and over. And maybe the resent to haul is a sense of adrenaline or anger, and it can be used to avoid my own feelings. Okay. Um, yeah, yeah. We can go on and on, but it divides families. There's families that people won't talk to each other for years. It's sad, just years. of non-communication. And yeah, so going back to our handy AA reading here. So how are we going to be free? Well, it says it right here on page 66. How I remembered is 666. Yeah, anything to do with resentment here. We turn back, yeah, it's not 666, but just 66. We turn back to the list, for it held the key to the future. We were prepared to look at it from an entirely different angle. We began to see that the family members, okay, the wrong that they did really was dominating me. In that state, the wrongdoing of family members, fancied or real, had the power to actually kill me. How could I escape? We saw that the resentments must be mastered, but how? We could not wish them away any more than alcohol. So this was our course. We realized that the family members who wronged us were perhaps spiritually sick. Though we did not like their symptoms and the way they disturbed us, they, like ourselves, were sick too. We asked God to help us show them the same tolerance, pity, patience that we would cheerfully grant a sick friend. When a family member offended, we said to ourselves, this is a sick person. So we say gently to ourselves, my mother is spiritually sick, my brother is spiritually sick, my sister is spiritually sick, my wife is spiritually sick, my son is spiritually sick, my daughter is spiritually sick, my brother-in-law is spiritually sick, my sister-in-law is spiritually sick. I went through all that because I didn't want any of these people to go, oh no, he's holding a grudge and now he's publicly exposing this. No, I mean, I don't think I have many towards anybody there. I'm not perfect. But anyway, the point is I wanted to really personalize it. Now we're going to get to the punchline here, is that while I'm asking God to help me show them the same tolerance, pity, which really means love here, patience, we would cheerfully grant a sick friend. And yeah, though we did not like their symptoms and the way they disturbed us, they, like ourselves, were sick too. So we're all sick. That's really the punchline here. I can't get any higher pedestal and start being judgmental if I'm going to be well. And I think this is a really good perspective. When a person offended, we said to ourselves, this is a sick family member. How can I be helpful to them? Often it's me getting out of the way, me not saying anything, me running to prayer. I can always talk later about something if I have to, if I just can't let something go. But I have to go to God with this. Resentment is, I think, a spiritual darkness, a sickness in and of itself. I can't uproot it by myself. I don't know of any therapy process that comes close to uprooting this. And I love therapy and therapists and psychology, but here's the thing, they do have holes in their system. One of them is resentment. They don't even deal with it. Yeah, just not. I mean, I haven't seen it. There's no system I know of, and yet look how much it's destroying the whole family system. And it comes easy. I mean, it could be a little child, and then they have a sister born, and now they're jealous of that sister. Yeah. Or parents that divorced, and now they're just, their heart is broken, or their dad never came to visit them, or a parent who was physically abusive or emotionally abusive. There's probably hardly anybody that doesn't have some memory where their caregiver, their parents let them down, or something was said to them that was so painful. Okay. Yeah. So I think the difference is resentaholics or addicts hold on to it. And we just have the brain that's just going to hold on to that. And that's is what's going to kill us versus The person or the family system that's just more naturally cheerful, like, you know what, people are people, they make mistakes. My parents did the best they knew to do. So we pray these prayers. This is what's working the program with our family members. We say, God, save me from being angry. Thy will, not mine, be done. We avoid retaliation or argument. So that means just not arguing would be a great start. Don't retaliate. We can only do this by God's grace. We wouldn't treat sick people that way. If someone's on a sick bed and you saw me hurting this sick person, you go, my gosh, stop. That's horrible. Don't do that to that sick people. No one would do that. The problem is spiritual sickness doesn't look like sickness. But in essence, it's the same thing. It'd be like if I inflict other people with my spiritual sickness because I'm so mad at them and they did so wrong, that's harming them. That's actually making it worse, even though I feel so self-righteous in that. Okay. So this is so extremely important, so powerful. It's probably one of the most important things that changed my life. Um, if we do, so if we avoid retaliation and argument, if we do argue, retaliate, we destroy our chances of being helpful. We cannot be helpful to all people, but at least God will show us how to take a kindly and tolerant view of each and every one. Referring to our list again, okay, this is a resentment towards our family, putting out of the minds the family members, putting out of our minds the the wrongs the other family members had done to me. We resolutely looked for our own mistakes. So I'm going to stop here. Now, there are people that grew up with horrible abusive situations, all kinds of stuff. Okay. And this deals with that. But just walk with me through this when it says, well, where had I been selfish, dishonest, self seeking, and frightened? Well, I can say growing up with some childhood things or even adult things that family members said that were really kind of rough. And if I shared with anybody, they go, yeah, that's rough. But was I frightened? Yeah, I was frightened. Okay. Am I honestly seeing that as accurately as I could? Mm, you know, as I mature, I think that maybe I saw it through my broken eyes or a 5-year old's eyes or but what we do know about memory is that every time you remember something, it's reliving that in a certain thing and things can be added. Okay. And I think resentment clouds our vision. Now, I'm not saying that there's a tendency for human nature to minimize things, especially abuse. It can take years before people really are in touch with the damage that parents have caused because of their brokenness. And that a lot of times therapy is trying to help people be honest with what happened the other direction. But we may go, I wasn't selfish here. I wasn't dishonest. Was I self seeking? Well, I wanted parents to hold me and hug me, not hit me. Okay. Or I wanted them not to drink. Okay. So that's self seeking. But maybe the situation, I'm just trying to live through this and they did this. Though a situation had not been entirely our fault, we tried to disregard the other person involved entirely. Where were we to blame? Again, people could go, I had nothing to do with the sexual abuse or the drinking or the violence. Okay, yeah. But there may be aspects later we can look at. But if you go, nope, it just something bad happened to me. The inventory was ours, not the other man's. When we saw our faults, we listed them. We placed them before us in black and white. We admitted our wrongs honestly and were willing to set these matters straight. So, how does one deal with issues of abuse, of neglect. For the most part, it's me as a 60-year-old or 50-year-old or 40-year-old or even 23-year-old holding on to such grudges. Yeah, it almost really doesn't matter what was done to us. Just the very fact that I'm holding on to something is the problem. That's the real problem. So say like um, something totally out of the blue happens, and it's not a family member, so it's a little bit easier to deal with. But say like your family member gets run over by a drunk driver, you know, or an act of God where they fall off a cliff, or you're mad because your baby passes away. I mean, these things are very, very difficult. But as long as I hold on to the resentment over and over, I'm not going to have any peace. I somehow have to come to peace with that and let it go. Just let it go. And I can't do that without God's grace. And so it's good to see our friend J Page 99999. I'll read that in a minute. Um, the thing there is families. I think it's harder because we live with them or we grew up with them, and the wound seems to be so there. And we have good therapy, but when the therapists have standards saying you should have got this, and this, and then we start to compare, we go, my gosh, we were toast. But if I see my parents as perhaps spiritually sick, I see my siblings, my whole family system is perhaps spiritually sick, that we're all trying to do the best we know to do. And that maybe if I were to be angry at something, to be in early Christianity talks about this, to be mad at the sin or to be mad at the addiction in our family or to be mad at the dysfunction, and to use that very anger, that repurpose that anger to use it towards working towards health. I think that's actually really the key there. And how am I going to fight it? And this sounds too mamsy pamsy, but I'm not going to fight it with more anger. I'm not going to fight it with more resentment. I have to go to a place of humility, a place of brokenness, a place of tears, a place of feeling the feelings surrounding what the wrong was, but a place of crying it out and grieving what I didn't get and to let it out and forgive, to forgive, to understand, to appreciate that people did the best they knew to do. Um, Brene Brown, who's quite popular these days, I really do admire her a lot. She tells the story in an interview with Russell Brand. It's a long interview. It's worth looking up. I'll put it in the comments. They do some politic talking, but it's very interesting. Not really. They're talking about society. In the middle of this interview, they start talking about compassionate people and how compassionate people they've studied actually have better boundaries than non-compassionate people, which was quite surprising. You would think that compassionate people might have looser boundaries and give way too much. But when interviewed and asked, hey, why do you have such strong boundaries? And they go, well, because I'm compassionate. Like, I'm not going to let people use me. That's not good for them or me. So when we talk about have compassion towards our parents or dysfunction, it doesn't mean that one way to be free in our morning meditation and when we're praying, God may say, look, my part in it is I was not speaking the truth in love. I let the dysfunction grow. I was too passive. I just would not speak up and say, look, this really hurts when you do that. I would let this rub grow and grow and grow because I wanted to look like a good, holy person and not be hurt, you see. or I'm too afraid to say something. In the dysfunctional family, there's three rules. Don't talk. We'll talk about it in the next um, podcast in about 10 minutes here. Um, don't talk, don't feel, don't trust. Those are the three rules in a dysfunctional home. So we don't talk about what's going on. We don't say, I think there's too much drinking, or I feel uncomfortable with this yelling and screaming, or we just get frightened, we clam up, we just don't say anything. And so we do that because we don't want to feel. We don't want to feel bad. We don't want them to feel bad. So, see, maybe my defective character that's keeping resentment alive is people pleasing. Each resentment, usually there's something underneath it. Maybe I'm perfectionistic. Maybe I have such high standards of people that no one could possibly um, meet my expectations. So, so you'll find that God will guide you to a place of forgiveness, and it's vital if you want to stay sober and to be free. Let's look here. I'm going to show this here. Yeah, so we read here that we can have remorse towards ourselves. Um, yeah, here it says sometimes it was remorse and we stayed sore at ourselves. The more we fought and tried to have our own way, the worse matters got. What you're going to find is a lot in this program boils down to self wanting something. And when I didn't get what I wanted in my childhood, or I didn't behave the way I wanted, or say, like, I have some character defect, this is quite interesting, that I'm mad at that I have this defective character. It just burns me that I have, like, I'm so selfish, or I'm so, um, and it's funny to say that because that's what's happening is it's still an obsession with self. Um, And resentment is kind of inebriating. It's not enough to be mad at the people. Now I'm mad at myself. I would say I can start by saying what not to do. If you want to be free from intense self hatred, I feel inside for having had these resentments. Well, it's praying for humility and lowering our standards. I mean, I'm somewhat, well, I'm not really that embarrassed, but maybe I should be, but I'm a human being a therapist. I'm a recovering person. I risk people looking at me or judging me or whatever because, well, therapists shouldn't have these problems or resentments and stuff. Yeah, but I found more people found me useful as a therapist to admit that I had similar problems. And actually, believe it or not, no one said I had to even be perfectly overcoming them. Yeah, no, they said, "Well, did you recover 100%?" Some things I feel so recovered, I could start to cry. I'm so thankful. But I'm still in process. But no, people do better with just me showing the path, just kind of pointing the way. And I would pray for healthy freedom from self, pray for what the defects of character are towards oneself, to forgive oneself. Um, I guess I could encourage you with miracles. Like, I see people that had years of self blame and self hatred or hatred towards their family members. And we do a few sometimes techniques. Did some ART therapy, or I've seen a person in a 4-step process working with them, and they go, I can't believe this. I feel so free. Like, just by mouthing the words, I forgive you, mom. I love you, mom. I know you did the best you knew to do, and I'm choosing not to harm you anymore by negative thinking. It does something. And when I say mouthing the words, one has to put their heart there. But God's grace will help free us. And that may be said in a therapy office, or it may actually said to mother. So when one does 12 steps, they look at the people they have harmed. So this resentment list, often we have to then go to our family members. And that's a delicate process. And that's maybe something we should talk about in light of addiction. Like, what does ninth step really look like? Does it mean we share that I'm an alcoholic, or I'm a overeater, or a compulsive spender? Some of these things could be pretty embarrassing, and maybe family members don't need to know the anonymity factor. On the other side, it could actually help. And I think the thing to consider is, how useful is this, and what is God guiding us to do? Even if we make mistakes along the process, but our heart is right, God makes it all better. We don't have to be perfect to really get better there. Um, and then we have, yeah, some of the resentments John shares, it sounds like a person has to choose to become sober. Someone else can't choose that for them. That's an important concept. So if we go back to our stories with interventions, it's evolved. Now the interventionalists say, well, the intervention was for us. It really wasn't for them. It was for us to disengage from trying to fix or to control the person, but to say, look, I loved you. I see you drink this way or use drugs this way, and it's hard for me to be in a relationship with you. And I just need to let you know that I'm doing this for me, that I have to not be near you if you're going to do this. That's painful, but it can be very loving and necessary, because it's keeping me free from resentment, because I'm not going to be near that. Two, it's helping me not feel their pain while they stick their hand in a fire of addiction and alcoholism. And then now I'm feeling the pain of it. And nag them, get your hand out of the fire. It's killing me. I mean, you, I mean, us. And it's like, hey, don't tell me what to do. It's like, when I detach, DETACH, don't even think about changing her or him. And I start to get boundary space, then their hand all of a sudden feels hot, and then they don't want to drink anymore. And technically, it's not me not wanting, it's not me making them do it. It's just I don't want to be in a relationship. And that can be a sacrifice of love, but there's a certain sense that God allows us not to be in relationship with Him either. He doesn't really continue to bless us with everything, otherwise, we'd stay sick. And I think that's what enabling and codependency does a lot, is it's this blood flow that keeps things alive. We just don't want to make waves, so then we watch the person drink themselves to death, or use drugs, or overeat, or spend. Some of these things are more deadly than others. And we then have inner judgments. Why do they do that and all that? Or we hint, you know, or, and it's probably better to either just accept them where they are and not feel their pain for them, or we say something in love, detach somewhat. And another Al Anon phrase, which I appreciate, it says, what's good for us is usually good for them. So if I'm following God, what God is wanting me to do, which obviously it does not help anybody for me to be resentful towards them. It only harms them and me, probably me more than them, but I'm not convinced that it's not sending bad vibes to that other person. Um, I talked a little bit about the problem. Maybe in the next one I'll talk more about the solution. But the solution is amazing. I've seen all kinds of things where people go to family members. They have um, this experience where huge changes happen. In the AA book, if we go fast forward here, um, it says years of feuding melt away, something to that. Um, I'm gonna go to, yeah, that men's is part of the solution here. And when it talks about how making amends to to a wife, um, I think that's key here. Um, let's see. I want to see if we're there. There. Okay. Um, page 82. It's talking about how to deal with infidelity. But on page 82, let's see. Notice this, sometimes we hear an alcoholic say the only thing they need to do is to keep sober. Yep, no, we need to mend the relationship. The alcoholic is like a tornado roaring his way through the lives of others. Hearts are broken, sweet relationships are dead. Affections have been uprooted. Selfish and inconsiderate habits have kept the home in turmoil. We feel a man is unthinking when he says that sobriety is enough. He is like the farmer who came up out of his cyclone cellar to find his home ruined. To his wife, he remarked, "Don't see anything the matter here, Ma. Ain't it grand that the wind stopped blowing?" I like that. There is a sense that we just don't get a sense of how addiction really harmed us. Page 83, it says we ought to sit down with the family and frankly analyze the past as we now see it, being very careful not to criticize them. Their defects may be glaring, but the chances are that our own actions are partly responsible. So we clean house with the family, asking each morning in meditation that our Creator or God show us the way of patience, tolerance, kindliness, and love. The spiritual life is not a theory, we have to live it. Okay, so there's much more there, which is great to talk about, but hopefully this gets you interested in looking at how to be free from resentments, to use the 12-step program, to just start to pray and ask God to uproot this and to remove this and to look at what my part is. And maybe the only thing is I'm just holding a grudge and I'm expecting way too much. And I do expect a lot. And I guess I need to finish this with Brene Brown. And it's worth going longer. Sorry about that. So the story with Brene Brown, in this interview, she studied, they studied compassionate people. But there's this really important, I think, really life-changing insight that I heard on YouTube, if you can believe that. She said that there is this thing that people were thinking, like, are people doing the best they know to do? Or are people not doing the best they know to do? And she says she was a hell no, people are not doing the best they know to do. And while I think logically and therapeutically that people are doing the best they know to do, deep down, if I sense that people didn't do the best they knew to do, um, I would get mad. That would be like the root of my resentment across the board. Like, if you as a person was doing the best you knew to do, and I see it every day, people really struggling, it was easy for me, not easy, but I mean, I'd have compassion because I know what it's like. And I was also one of those that grew up in a dysfunctional family and rose out of the ashes just by, I'm going to do this. So I tended to have less tolerance for people who acted like victims. Like, woe is me and I can't change and all that. It's like, no, if you can change, grow up, you can do this. And I think there's some value to that. But see, it was rooted in I didn't think that they were doing the best they know to do, that they somehow wanted to wallow in this and be a victim. That's my judgment. So that would build resentment. So she goes on to tell the story, and she's so vulnerable with this. I love her. She says, okay, here I am in the backseat of the car with one of her closest friends, and the guys, their husbands, are sitting up front. And she's talking about how, and hopefully I share the story correctly, but they're talking about this topic. Are people doing the best they know to do? And her girlfriend says, hell no, I don't believe it. And so they're commiserating of how people don't really work that hard in life. And um, her friend says, yeah, dig those mothers who, have babies and they don't even really breastfeed that long. Like, what's with that? And Brene has a moment, she goes, oh my gosh, that's me. I and she's going, oh yeah, that's not good. And inwardly, she's having this moment like she just, I won't get into the details, but it just wasn't working out. And she goes, well, I was doing the best I know to do. So she then talks to her husband, Steve, and says, Steve, and what I appreciate about her so much is you get a sense she has conversations that are deep with her spouse. And says, Steve, what do you think about this? Do you think people are doing the best they know to do? And he says, let me think about that, which is a very good answer of him. I'd like to know him someday. He gets back with her and says, I'm not sure I know the answer to that question, whether people are doing the best they know to do. But he says, what I do know is that life runs better for me if I assume that they are. And it took me days before that really sunk in. I realized that it is a best answer to not assume whether someone's doing the best they know to do. That's for God to judge. But if I want the default to be towards they could have done better. Like, if I want the default to be hell yes, people aren't doing the best they know to do. My life's not going to be happy. It's not going to be happy. And if I hold my family members with that attitude that you're not doing the best you know to do, and I know it, show you where that's going, I'm going to be resentful. That's like that's like the flint just to get the sparks going, or a good rip roaring resentment. If I say, God, save me from being angry, help me to understand that I do not understand. Help me to look at my own life rather than my family member's life. Um, what's the harm in assuming my parents or childhood or everybody did, like bullies or whatever, did the best they know to do? How is that harming? How is that really enabling anything? Unless God really specifically shows me that, hey, they aren't working hard enough. Well, how am I going to help that either? How is that? So it's I find that I'm moving back towards this belief and hope it seeps into my heart that, I don't really know. but I'm going to assume that people are doing the best they know to do. And perhaps God in my morning meditation will say, Eric, if you want to be free from the resentment, maybe you need to have more um, assertiveness. Just speak the truth in love. Get over the fear and just say, ouch, this hurts. Please don't do this. And then let it go. So anyway, it's good. I tell you, one thing I don't give any of these viewers, these kind viewers, as much notice. So I'm going to, in a few minutes, start the next one. Next one is going to be on just plain old understanding family dynamics. And I think it'll be helpful to people to understand family dynamics. And it'll be kind of like a course in family systems. So anyway, I'll see you in a few. Take care.